Timur was one of history's rare conquerors who rose from nothing, using his exceptional intelligence and determination to subdue vast lands and become a legendary ruler. He was born during the rule of the Chagatai Khanate and spent his early years beside his father Turagay, chief of the Barlas tribe. At that time, Transoxiana was under Chagatai control, though the Khanate was in decline. A fellow Barlas tribesman, Kazgan, became governor of Samarkand after years of struggle, just like Timur would later. Timur's first steps into military life began when he pledged loyalty to Kazgan from his own tribe. Recognizing Timur's talent, Kazgan gave him command of his troops. Timur served with distinction in his army. Kazgan was later ambushed and killed, leading to unrest in Samarkand. To restore order, Chagatai ruler Tughluq Timur Khan arrived. This is when he first met Timur. Timur introduced himself to the Khan, earned his trust, and joined the ranks of his commanders. Over time, Timur expanded his influence and eventually rose in rebellion against the Chagatai Khan. During this revolt, he faced countless dangers and fought many battles, especially against the Mongols, emerging victorious. After proving his strength, and with support from the Chagatai emirs, Timur was proclaimed sovereign, seated upon Whitefeld in accordance with ancient Turkmen tradition. Thus, the Chagatai state collapsed, and a new state was founded in its place under Timur's name. An exceptionally intelligent and organized man, Timur became a great empire in 15 years. Timur launched two major campaigns against the Golden Horde Khanate, shattering it completely. More than 100,000 people were killed in these battles. Toktamish Khan, the ruler of the Golden Horde, fled to the northern forests. The people were left devastated and scattered. The capital city of the Golden Horde, Sarai, was utterly destroyed. Thus, even without intending to, Timur paved the way for the rise of a powerful Russian state. Much later, the Russians investigated their history to determine their greatest national day, and declared the day Timur defeated Toktamish and entered Moscow as their greatest in national memory. Following this devastating defeat, the Golden Horde continued to weaken, while the Russians steadily grew stronger. After the Golden Horde campaign, Timur turned his sights on conquering Iran. At that time, with the collapse of the Ilkhanid state, several dynasties had risen in Iran. The strongest among them was the Muzaffarid dynasty. When Timur sent an envoy demanding their submission, the envoy was imprisoned, giving Timur, who was already seeking an excuse for war, the opportunity he needed. With his entire army, he marched into Iran. The uprising against Timur in Isfahan drove Jahangir into a furious rage. He ordered a massacre and commanded every soldier to bring back an Iranian head. That day, 70,000 Iranians were killed. The horrific fate of Isfahan terrified other Iranian cities. As a result, within 7 years, Iran came entirely under Timur's influence. After Iran, Timur set his sights on conquering the lands of Iraq. At that time, Sultan Ahmad of the Turkish Jalayirid dynasty ruled over Baghdad. Frightened by Timur's campaign in Iran, he formed an alliance with the Mamluks and the Kara Koyunlu against him. At the same time, he sent envoys and gifts to Timur, hoping to buy time and take precautionary steps. However, Timur, aware of Sultan Ahmad's schemes, swiftly advanced toward Baghdad. Upon hearing of Timur's approach, Sultan Ahmad immediately abandoned the capital and took refuge with the Mamluks. Timur soon captured the Jalayirid lands and appointed a governor to rule the region. Meanwhile, The threat of Timur began to seriously alarm all the Islamic states in the West. As a result, these countries began forming alliances against Timur. Seeing that the entire Western Front was uniting against him, Timur withdrew from Baghdad and returned to Samarkand. After Timur's retreat from the region, Mamluk ruler Berkuk marched his army toward Baghdad. He defeated Timur's governor in the area and reinstated Sultan Ahmad as ruler of his country. Timur intended to take revenge on the Mamluks, but he was forced to go on a campaign to India. His departure to India was seen by the Islamic states in the West as a sign that Timur's threat had faded, so the alliances against him weakened. This was exactly what Timur wanted to happen in the West. Timur launched a campaign in India and defeated the Indian armies in fierce battles, killing more than 100,000 people. As a result of this campaign, Timur conquered North India and returned to Samarkand with enormous spoils. That same year, the death of the Mamluk Sultan Berkuk created a power vacuum in the Mamluk administration. Taking advantage of this weakness, Bayezid captured the Mamluk-held city of Malatya and brought the Dulkadirid Principality, a Mamluk vassal, under his protection. Thus, forming an alliance between the Mamluks and the Ottomans against Timur became impossible. This was a major mistake on the part of Bayezid the Thunderbolt. Timur, who regularly gathered intelligence through his network of spies, closely monitored the instability in the Mamluk state and the rift between the Mamluks and the Ottomans after Berkuk's death. He eventually decided that the time had come to crush both of his enemies separately, and in 1399 he departed from Samarkand. When Sultan Ahmad and Kara Yusuf, ruler of the Kara Koyunlu, heard that Timur was advancing westward with his armies, they understood the campaign was aimed at them. Leaving part of their forces behind, they immediately sought refuge in Mamluk territory. However, the emirs of Aleppo and Hama did not accept these two rulers, so they sought refuge with the Ottoman ruler, Bayezid the Thunderbolt. Bayezid the Thunderbolt took them under his protection and gave Sultan Ahmad the administration of Kütahya and Kara Yusuf the administration of Aksaray. Meanwhile, Timur marched through these regions and advanced as far as Tabriz. He made Tabriz the center of military operations and launched a campaign toward Georgia. After conquering all of Georgia, he descended into the Passanla region. When Timur arrived, the rulers of the former Anatolian principalities, Mentesh, Saruhan, Germian, and Aydin, whose lands had been annexed by Bayezid, came and declared their loyalty and respect. They complained about Bayezid the Thunderbolt and tried to provoke Timur against him, requesting the liberation of their lands. Timur said, "O Bays, whether your words be truth or falsehood, I do not know. For he is a Ghazi Khan. He does not oppress without cause, nor would he wrong you if you are without guilt." They said, "O Sultan, you are the Sahib Kiran. The son of Osman is a tyrant. He has left us destitute and seized the throne of our fathers and forefathers. You well know how we have come before you in utter supplication. That realm too is worthy of none but a Khan such as yourself." In addition, anti-Ottoman powers such as Genoa, France, Rome, and Castile were in close contact with Timur in favor of this war. Furthermore, Timur sought to weaken the Ottomans from within by winning over Kara Yuluk Uthman Beg of the Akkoyunlu and Mutahartin, Emir of Erzincan, by making them promises and drawing them to his side. Timur, already on campaign and aiming to advance further west, addressed Bayezid in a commanding tone and demanded that Sultan Ahmad of the Jalayirids and Kara Yusuf of the Karakoyunlu be sent to him or executed, or at the very least, expelled from the land. Meanwhile, Bayezid Khan, who was engaged in the siege of Istanbul, received Timur's envoys extremely coldly. he rejected Timur's demands, saying they were unbefitting of royal sovereignty and contrary to the honor of kingship. It is also said that his letter contained severe insults directed at Timur. In response, Timur set out from Pasinlir with a large army in July 1400. He marched through Erzurum to Erzincan and from there continued to Sivas. Sivas was surrounded on all four sides. When the news reached Bayezid, he was forced to immediately lift the siege of Istanbul. He sent word to his son, Çelebi Mehmed, asking him to come to the aid of Sivas. Çelebi Mehmed and Timurtaş Pasha quickly gathered an army and marched on Sivas. When Timur learned that Çelebi Mehmed was advancing, he dispatched a unit under the command of Cihan Shah to intercept them. In the ensuing battle, Cihan Shah routed the forces of Çelebi Mehmed. The city of Sivas resisted Timur's fierce assault, which involved catapults, massive stones, and mining tactics. However, the defeat of the Ottoman vanguard led to despair within the city. Timur had promised the people of the city that if they surrendered, no blood would be shed and amnesty would be granted. Thus, the people of Sivas surrendered. Upon entering the city, Timur kept his promise not to shed blood, yet had 4,000 people buried alive. Although the Timurid historian Sharaf al-Din Yazdi claimed that those buried were Armenians, the chronicle of Nizam al-Din Shami, his own source, contains no such indication. The mighty Seljuk fortress of Sivas, once a symbol of grandeur, was razed to the ground and the city never regained its former glory. Timur released Mustafa Bey, the commander of the fortress, instructing him to recount all he had witnessed to his sovereign, Bayezid. Yet he did not continue deeper into Anatolia to pursue Bayezid, his true target. At the time, Timur had not gathered sufficient intelligence on Bayezid's situation and military strength through his spies. Instead, Timur sought to intimidate Bayezid's realm with plunder and terror, aiming to crush the will of the Anatolian population through fear. The brave resistance of Sivas gave Timur pause. The Jahangir, who had grown accustomed to seizing every city with ease, now feared that if the rest of Anatolia resisted as fiercely as Sivas had, his forces might wear out and lose strength. Therefore, he felt the need to return to Anatolia later with much larger armies. In the meantime, he sent a letter to the Sultan of Mamluk Egypt demanding that the governor of Avnik, Atlamish, be handed over. The Mamluk Sultanate responded by arresting Timur's envoy. Thus, Timur gained a justification to launch his Syrian campaign. The devastating fate of Sivas deeply grieved Bayezid. However, as he was not fully prepared, he could not retaliate immediately. While Bayezid was gathering troops from both Rumelia and Anatolia, the Dulkadir Turkmens attacked Timur's camp and captured many of his war horses. Enraged by this, Timur launched an assault on the land of Dulkadir. The Turkmens fled into the steep mountains to escape Timur's army. In response, Timur ordered the city of Elbistan to be plundered. Then Timur marched onto the city of Malatya, which he captured with little resistance. He took all the Christians in the city as prisoners. He spared the lives of Muslims in exchange for ransom. He then headed toward Aleppo to punish the Mamluk Sultan for what had been done to his envoy. Upon learning of this, Bayezid the Thunderbolt immediately sent an envoy to the Mamluk emirs and proposed forming an alliance to act together against Timur. However, the Mamluks, arguing that Bayezid could not be trusted and that if Timur were defeated, Bayezid might attempt to seize Syria, just as he had previously taken Malatya, rejected the alliance and decided to fight Timur on their own. Finally, the armies of Timur and the Mamluks came face to face before the city of Aleppo. a fierce and terrible battle ensued. Although the Mamluk army managed to strike a powerful blow against Timur's forces, in the end, it was Timur who emerged victorious. The Mamluk army was forced to retreat, and the city of Aleppo was plundered by Timur's troops. From Aleppo, Timur's army marched straight to Damascus via Hama and Homs. The final battle with the Mamluks took place in front of the walls of Damascus and ended with the surrender of the city along with its fortress. Severe destruction was wrought upon these two important Syrian cities. Many were killed, and looting followed one after another. Bayezid the Thunderbolt anticipated that Timur, after defeating the Mamluks, would proceed to Egypt and then return to Anatolia to strike him. For this reason, he marched with his army to Kayseri. But to reach Egypt, Timur would have had to cross the Sinai Desert, a risk he chose not to take. Instead, he decided to turn his attention to Baghdad. When Bayezid learned that Timur was advancing on Baghdad, he saw the threat shift away from his region and seized the opportunity to punish Mutaharton for his betrayal by marching on Erzincan. He quickly captured the city. Meanwhile, he appointed Kara Yusuf, the former ruler of the Karakoyunlu, as the governor of the entire eastern region, and tasked him with reclaiming his old homeland of Azerbaijan. Thus, Kara Yusuf began stirring unrest in eastern Anatolia and Azerbaijan, harassing the forces Timur had left behind. Meanwhile, Timur captured and razed Baghdad. Upon hearing that Kara Yusuf was attacking his troops in Azerbaijan, he immediately moved to Tabriz. When Bayezid the Thunderbolt learned that Timur was moving from Iraq to Azerbaijan, he sent Sultan Ahmad with a large army to retake his capital. Bayezid the Thunderbolt began to wear Timur down through tactical maneuvers. When Timur reached Tabriz, he resolved to fight a final battle against Bayezid the Thunderbolt. But Bayezid the Thunderbolt was not a commander who could be easily defeated. A much larger army was needed to overpower him. So Timur sent word to Samarkand, ordering all of his armies to gather in Tabriz. It would take some time for all the troops to assemble and reach the city. During this period, Timur tried to buy time by writing letters of reconciliation to Bayezid. To His Majesty Bayezid the Valiant, the greatest of the nobles, the just ruler, the one supported by the decree of God, the Almighty King, you portrayed yourself as a jihadist in the path of Allah and deemed me a disbeliever who spilled blood unjustly, a mere novice in the art of war. Know that I have devoted nearly 40 years of my life to jihad. In that time, I have conquered castles and lands, liberating countless cities. And this state of mine is now clearer and more certain than ever. Throughout these struggles, many have submitted to me and sacrificed their lives for our cause. So why do you refrain from serving me and withhold your affection? Besides, I am older than you. Wherever I have gone until now, Alhamdulillah, I have conquered it swiftly. I also captured Sivas in a short time. You besieged Malatya for 4 months and still failed to take it. You had to retreat. And how long has it been since you failed to capture Sinop Castle? Do not fall into arrogance and threats as you did in your letter, and do not speak words that are far from reason. Moreover, I have already understood your situation from the men I captured in Sivas. Therefore, I did not find it appropriate to harm the Muslims or destroy the property and homes of rulers. For this reason, consider it a noble act to send a good reply. This way, you will save your country from ruin. If you return to the path of agreement with us and respond with an apologetic expression, there will be friendship and love between us. In this way, the Frankish infidel will not be given an opportunity, and we will give up Sivas and return. Our intention and inclination is not to weaken you and keep you busy, and thus help the religion of the Kafirs. Our cause is jihadism. Sermons are read in the name of our sultanate and coins are minted. There is no doubt that we are the supreme authority of Muslims. Moreover, it is clear that the Ottoman soldiers were mostly recruited from infidels. Our cause is jihadism. Sermons are read in the name of our sultanate and coins are minted. There is no doubt that we are the supreme authority of Muslims. Our lineage goes back to Ilhani Alishan. If your sincere greeting comes with a letter with good words, there will be softening and love between both sides. Otherwise, when the sword appears, there will be no room for the pen. Wassalam, before and after, and al-khayru ma akhtarahu Allahu zahiran wa batinan. Bayezid the Thunderbolt responded to this letter as follows. O ruler of the age, Timur Kogregen, you have made a strange comparison by likening your coming and settling in Sivas to our march toward Tabriz. Moreover, if we reach Shirvan from Kefe and send troops to that country, who can prevent us? The Kipchak people are tired of you and prefer to be with us. Your claim about Malatya and Sinop is also not true. The siege was abandoned for some reasons. It was not due to the lack of our soldiers or the abundance of your troops. The stubbornness of the rulers of Kastamonu and Karaman, and the fact that they took the opportunity to attack some of our provinces, made it necessary for us to lift the siege on Malatya and Sinop. I am informed that my ancestor Ertugrul Khan, together with about 300 of his veterans, struck 10,000 Tatars of Hulagu's army and defeated those who had defeated Alaeddin Keykubat. After that, he was granted the honor of ruling the state. He was given the robe of honor, and by the grace of Allah, he ruled in place of the Seljuks, not through rebellion or uprising. From the first Kulus of Osman Bey, he fought against the infidels on all four sides with more than 200,000 soldiers day and night. Today, this star of our sultanate has reached the 4th rank, and the number of castles and towns we have conquered so far is beyond what the sultans of the past could even imagine. After explaining the historical course of the Ottoman Sultanate with these words, he explained the purpose of Ottoman power with the following statements. In our eyes, the value of the world and all that is in it is as insignificant as a straw compared to jihad in the way of Allah. We take great pleasure in calling the Ottoman soldier the son of Abdullah, because the ancestors of all the Sahaba-i-Kiram were disbelievers, yet they themselves became Muslims. Those who are such Muslims are far, far superior to the Muslim Zadids who have no justice. What can be said after you devastated Sivas and violated the honor of the people of Islam? Now you are trying to deflect the initial blame from yourself. Your letters in Arabic and Persian were nothing but harshness, rudeness, arrogance, and pride. The House of Osman has not acquired lands through deceit. Our letters were written after consultation with our wise state officials. We have never and will never take any action solely based on our own measures. And if anyone is coming against us for battle, we are ready to say Tawakkaltu ala Allah, that is our state, and peace. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakul, ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir, alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Meanwhile, the Mamluks, after their major defeat against Timur, agreed to form an alliance with Bayezid the Thunderbolt. At that time, Sultan Ahmed had attacked Timur's garrison in Baghdad. Timur, in response, wrote another letter and briefly said, "We know that you are fighting the infidels. On our side, we are fighting the Georgian infidels. Do not include those who are not our friends among your close ones. Sultanate affairs are tied to courtesy. There are many aspects that require care. Ahmad Jalayir is now near Baghdad, and we have already sent troops to that region. If he escapes to your side again, we do not want you to protect him. On the contrary, our request is that you capture him and hand him over to us. We have arrived at Erzincan, and for now, we are stationed at the frontier, waiting for your envoys and ready to devastate the region. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakul, ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir, Rabbu ukhtim bil khayri wal husna." When Timur gave this letter to the envoy, he also instructed him to say, "We shall spend this winter here. In the spring, we will come to the Ottoman frontier. If an envoy comes from you, this is what we wish. If not, we will meet him in battle and turn his iron sword into a candle." Besides the emirs around Bayezid, many scholars were also against waging war with Timur, especially his sheikh and son-in-law, Emir Sultan, a great scholar and spiritual guide of the time, made significant efforts to prevent this war. Emir Sultan, who did not wish to see two Muslim Turkish armies clash, persistently advised Bayezid to approach Timur with gentleness, to seem as if accepting his terms, and to stay away from war at all costs. But Bayezid the Thunderbolt did not trust Timur. He believed that war was inevitable and that Timur was only looking for a pretext. for Timur's aim was conquest, world domination. He did not recognize any ruler other than himself and demanded the allegiance of all. Bayezid was not wrong in his assumption. Timur had long made up his mind about war. He had pretended to seek peace only to delay Bayezid while gathering all his forces. Once large armies arrived in Tabriz from Samarkand, the decision to go to war was confirmed and action was taken. A great war was being approached step by step. Some of Timur's wise beys and scholars were against attacking Anatolia. They did not wish to raise a sword against a sultan who was a pioneer of Gaza and a traveler on the path of jihad in Rumelia. But due to fear of Timur, none of them dared to express this. Finally, a scholar from the ulama, Shamseddin Effendi of Al-Malik, stood before Timur and said, "Sultan Bayezid is a ruler girded with the belt of zeal, and his state is one with armies that share in victory. His sharp sword is a scourge upon the Franks, and his pearl-scattering hand is a most precious treasure. He is a sultan who has drawn the reins of his endeavors to the path of expedition and jihad, and has set his head to protect the borders of Islam. To fight with such a shahanshah is to fight with a ruler who spreads the religion and implements the way and rulings of the Prophet. It is neither worthy of your state, nor in accordance with the sentiments of the hearts of your powerful lords. Even if the winds of victory blow in our favor, in reality it will cause the enemies of religion to rejoice. Time will quickly bring about the collapse of this state, perhaps even its extinction." Timur hesitated in the face of these words. At that time, a comet appeared in the sky, and he called the astrologer Abdullah bin Lisan and asked for the interpretation of this celestial event. The famous astrologer, "If the comet appears in Burki Hamel, the army coming from the east will attack the Greek sides, and the Greek ruler will be captured." With this comment, he reported that Timur would be victorious. Having decided to wage war, Timur was now looking for ways to shift the blame for the war onto Bayezid, and began to put forward proposals that Bayezid could not accept. المملكة منابع سلطنة كباب فلك والحكام في الزمان Bayezid Bahadur Khan, I have been working for peace until now, and finally I came to Sivas. Worried about not giving an opportunity to the infidel and destroying the lands of Islam, we took our revenge on the Mamluks by going to Damascus. While the rumors were circulating that you were ill, we took this as an opportunity and ignored it. However, you took the opportunity to come to Erzincan, which was under our control, and offended our governor. Our man Mutahartin wrote to us that you regretted it in order to make peace, so we trusted and sent letters several times in the hope that a treaty would be reached for peace, but you became more and more rigid, until the word that we and our soldiers were infidels, and infidels worse than infidels, became a household word. Your envoys, Sungur and Ahmed, have been with us for a long time. They know our Islam and faith. Our goal was to head towards Kefe and Crimea, but we had to turn back from Shirvan and reach that direction again through Erzincan. Our request is that you inform us that Sivas, Malatya, Elbistan, Erzincan and Kema have been ceded to us with a strong covenant name before our soldiers enter your cities. I am not opposed to peace, and I am committed to it. A copy of this treaty should be kept sealed in Bab al-Haram in Makkah al-Mukarramah, so that it will be revealed who has and who has not abided by this treaty. This letter was sent with Sungur, Ahmad and Haji Bayazid. Alhamdulillahi wahdah, wassalatu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin, wassalam wal-ikram. Timur was constantly talking about Muslim brotherhood and saying that he did not want to devastate Islamic countries, but he was preparing for war down to the last detail. From the beginning until the moment he moved to clash with Bayezid, Timur was always making demands, and in every letter he always spoke in a high tone. However, there was no legitimate reason for Timur to demand land from the Ottomans. He only wanted Bayezid to submit to him and acknowledge his power. In his response, Bayezid essentially said, "If Ahmed Jalayir returns to the Ottoman lands, you have asked me to deliver him to you, along with Kara Yusuf. The sword shall not be drawn against a guest who enters this mansion, and those who take refuge in this land shall not be harmed." It is unmanly to drive away someone who seeks refuge, and especially to hand him over to his enemy. Even Hulagu Khan did not ask the Sultan of Egypt for the Abbasids who fled there. He gave up on such petty demands. Surely, this friend of yours cannot offend your memory by protecting 1 or 2 people who have suffered the slap of fate. What we desire is that you withdraw your hand from Sivas and its surroundings. Doing so will be taken as a sign of your goodwill. Yet in any case, no one can escape the decree of Allah, and we have no fear of anyone. If harsh words are to lead to conflict, let it be known that the first letter full of severity came from you. If flattery is expected from us, know that our dynasty has never begged anyone but God. Both victory and defeat are among the traditions of the saints. Enough words have been spoken. It is not possible to prevent the excuses of those who seek war. Whoever starts the strife on either side shall bear the burden. وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهُودًا بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمْ وَرَزَقْنَا وَإِيَّكُمْ خَيْرًا مَا قَدَرًا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكَالُ نِعْمَ الْمَوْلَى وَنِعْمَ النَّصِيرُ وَالسَّلَامُ وَالْإِكْرَامُ. After fully completing his preparations, Timur brought his army to Erzurum and established his headquarters there. A careful examination of the course of events shows that the one responsible for the war was not Bayezid, but Timur himself. It was Timur, not Bayezid, who initiated the attack. As Timur waged wars of conquest and advanced westward into eastern Anatolia, he encountered Bayezid. As the Sultan of the Ottoman realm, it was Bayezid's most natural duty and most honorable right to defend his own land. Perhaps Bayezid's greatest fault was his excessive pride and overconfidence in his own strength. Wasn't it possible to handle Timur's threats with gentle distractions and small concessions, as recommended by His Eminence Emir Sultan? But considering Timur's demands, this was no easy task. In general, his demands were as follows. 1. The surrender or execution of Sultan Ahmed, the ruler of Baghdad, and Kara Yusuf of the Karakoyunlu. 2. The handover of Erzincan, Sivas, Malatya, Elbistan, and Kema to Timur. 3. Sending one of Bayezid's sons as a hostage to Timur. 4. Submitting to Timur and donning the ceremonial robe of allegiance. 5. Not doing anything that would go against Timur's wishes. Bayezid the Thunderbolt was a sovereign of pride and valor. He had never lost a battle he had entered until then. He had crushed the massive Crusader army at Nicopolis and succeeded in every endeavor he had undertaken. Moreover, as a Turk, he was firmly committed to the principle that one cannot live without independence. In this situation, the clash between these two sovereigns had become inevitable. Timur advanced on Erzincan with his massive army of 160,000 men. Erzincan was captured in 15 days and the army reached Sivas. Timur, who wanted to cunningly win over the Kara-Tatars, of Mongolian descent and present in the Ottoman ranks, sent Emir Fazıl to them. He succeeded in winning them over by promising principalities from the conquered territories. He was also accompanied by his elite troops, forces under the command of his sons and grandsons, the sultans of Shirvan and Gilan, the rulers of Diyarbakir and its surroundings, the shahs of Sistan and Badakhshan, the khans of Turkestan, and the rulers of former Anatolian principalities. Upon hearing that Timur had arrived in Sivas, Bayezid took position in Akdamadeni and Kada city. He planned to ambush the mostly cavalry-based enemy army in rugged mountainous terrain and then attack. Timur recognized this danger and deemed it unwise to move his cavalry through mountainous areas. Since most of Bayezid's army consisted of infantry, Timur wanted to wear them down and strike while they were exhausted. So, he avoided a direct clash and turned toward Kayseri. After looting and plundering the city of Kayseri, he seized the farmlands of its people to provision his army. Timur then moved on to Kırşehir, carefully avoiding a raid, and headed towards Ankara, the center of the Ottoman camp. He arrived in Ankara before Bayezid and began besieging the castle. Bayezid, who had intended to fight the battle in the mountains due to the majority of his army being composed of infantry, gathered his commanders to discuss measures after learning that Timur had not gone to Tokat and was following the Kızılırmak Bend. Grand Vizier Ali Pasha proposed staying in the mountainous region and wearing down Timur's army by ambushing and raiding from the hills, and then fighting the final battle at a suitable location. but Hoja Firuz proposed to immediately march upon Timur in order to save Anatolia from his tyranny and destruction. Because with every passing moment, the Ottoman people were being massacred, Bayezid, deeply affected by the Sivas disaster, accepted Hoja Firuz's proposal and swiftly marched toward Ankara to intercept Timur. Despite the fact that most of his army were infantry and exhausted, he still pressed on to catch up with Timur. He finally reached the area during Timur's siege of Ankara and took up position opposite him. While Timur was still besieging the castle of Ankara, he prepared his army for an attack from the southeast, expecting Bayezid to come from that direction. However, Bayezid the Thunderbolt suddenly appeared from the northeast, an unexpected direction. Timur's forces were astonished to see the Ottoman armies coming from a totally different direction at an unexpected moment. Timur had truly been ambushed. According to Timur's historian Nizameddin Shami, who was present at the battle that day, the raid so frightened the army and Timur that he reported he spent the night praying to God for victory in the battle as he reorganized the army. If Timur's army was surprised and unprepared, the advantage would go to the Ottoman army. His sons and pashas were begging Bayezid to attack immediately. However, Bayezid the Thunderbolt said, "Let them gather, let Timur's people come together so we may fight valiantly," and rejected the idea of a raid. Thus, this great opportunity was lost and Timur's prayers were answered. The Ottoman army, mostly composed of infantry, was already exhausted and thirsty before the battle began. Timur had achieved his goal and even poisoned all nearby water to make it undrinkable so that the Ottoman soldiers would suffer further. Bayezid's hesitation at the start of the war gave Timur extra time. He immediately reorganized and redeployed his forces in front of the Ottomans. The Ottoman army was less than half the size of Timur's army. Against the Ottomans, unlike any of his other enemies, Timur had gathered his best armored troops, and his army numbered 160,000 men. The Ottoman army, according to most sources, was between 70,000 and 90,000 men at most. Bayezid the Thunderbolt was positioned in the center of the army, along with the Grand Vizier Tandaluzadeh Ali Pasha and the Janissaries. Prince Isa, Prince Musa and Prince Mustafa were positioned in front of the Sultan along with the Azabs. On the left flank were the Rumelian troops under the command of Prince Suleiman and Hoca Firuz Bey. On the right flank were the Anatolian troops under the command of Kara Timurtash Pasha, the Beylerbey of Anatolia, with the Serbian troops under the command of Serbian King Stefan Lazarevich, and the Kara Tatars, who had secretly joined Timur before the battle. The Kipchaks and Turkmens who had defected from Timur and joined the Ottomans were positioned on the left wing under the command of Evrenuz Bey. Prince Çelebi Mehmed was at the rear of the army with the reserve forces composed of the Timariot Sipahis of Amasya, Tokat and Sivas. In Timur's army, the central forces were divided into two and assigned to Emir Tilal and Omar Sheikh. Myran Shah was on the right wing and Shahrukh was on the left wing. Halil Sultan and Suleiman Shah were on the second left wing, while Sheikh Nuddin, Burunduk and Mutahartan, the ruler of Erzincan, were on the right. The second line of forces was divided into two parts, one commanded by Emirzadeh Sultan Hussein and the other by Emirzadeh Abu Bakr. Kara Yuluk Uthman Beg of Ak Koyunlu was positioned behind the forces led by Abu Bakr. The reserve forces were under the command of Mehmet Sultan. Timur was positioned at the center of the second line of the center. In front of the army, 32 elephants brought from India were lined up. Among the Anatolian beys who had taken refuge with Timur, Isfendiar Bey, Mehmet Bey of Menteşe, Aydınolu, and Yakub Bey of Germian were also PR sent with their elite troops. Both armies were fully prepared to fight each other fiercely. Muslim Turks made up the backbone of both sides. Timur had arrived in Ankara earlier and was rested. Bayezid's army was exhausted. Since most of Timur's army was cavalry, it had greater speed and mobility. In addition, Timur had numerical superiority. As a result, before the battle began, the overall conditions were in Timur's favor. This great confrontation, one of the most important pitched battles in history, began with an attack by Miranshah on the right flank of Timur's army. The dust raised by Miranshah's cavalry nearly made the battlefield invisible. The Rumelian troops on the Ottoman left flank were fighting fiercely. Bayezid the Thunderbolt ordered the Serbian forces to go support Suleiman Çelebi. With the arrival of the Serbs, Timur's right flank became virtually ineffective. Seeing Miranshah slowly retreat, Timur realized that this flank was about to collapse. To support Miranshah, Timur brought forward Emirzade Ebubekir and Karayülük Osman Bey, and sent his central attacking forces along with 32 elephants chained together toward the Ottoman center. The Azaps in the front lines met Timur's center as it advanced toward Bayezid the Thunderbolt, but the Azaps were helpless against Timur's elephants. While the elephants trampled the Azaps, the Janissary archers were aiming and shooting arrows at the elephants. Timur's chained elephants and Samarkand's armored cavalry had neutralized the Ottoman central attack. The Anatolian soldiers on the Ottoman right flank were also fighting very well and inflicting heavy casualties on Timur's left flank. The Kara Tatars suddenly switched sides and came to Timur's rescue. The Kara Tatars, mostly horse archers, attacked the Serbian and Rumelian army on the Ottoman left flank. This betrayal shocked the Ottoman left wing. However, the left wing did not collapse and continued to fight Timur's army in front and the Kara Tatars in the rear. When Timur saw that his left flank was melting against the Anatolian soldiers on the Ottoman right flank, he sent reinforcements here as well. Timur had also sent his former Anatolian beys here. Some of the soldiers on the right flank were from lands whose principalities had been conquered by Yildirim. It was not long before they warmed up to the Ottomans. Moreover, their beys were on Timur's side. The former beys were waving their flags and calling for their soldiers from the ranks of Timur. In response, the soldiers of the principalities of Aydın, Karaman, Menteşe, Germiyan and Saruhan switched sides and joined Timur's army, striking the other Anatolian soldiers from behind. In response to this betrayal, Prince Çelebi Mehmet rushed to the right flank to help with the reserve cavalry. A fierce battle was taking place on the right flank, and the situation here was critical for Timur, but he had managed to psychologically break the Ottoman soldiers on the flanks as a result of the betrayals. To use this advantage more effectively, he ordered a general attack in the afternoon. The whole army rushed at the Ottoman soldiers like raging waters. Despite the retreat and subsequent deterioration of the Ottoman flanks, Bayezid's center still held firm, and the Janissaries fiercely resisted. Many elephants were killed in the center, and Samarkand's troops began to weaken. But the Ottoman Sipahis had broken down, and the burden of the battle fell on the infantry. Towards the afternoon, Emir Suleiman and Vizier Ali Pasha, realizing that the battle would be lost, retreated from the battlefield and fled. After the afternoon, Çelebi Mehmed left the battlefield with some of his commanders and started to retreat towards Amasya, his standard. The regiment around Mustafa Çelebi was destroyed, and he himself was lost in the confused ranks of the battle. Of the Shehzades, Isa Çelebi was able to escape the battlefield safely. Shehzade Musa Çelebi, on the other hand, did not leave his father's side. It was now clear that the Ottomans had lost the battle. But Bayezid the Thunderbolt continued to endure and be an example to those around him with his bravery. Timurtash Pasha, Hoxha Firuz Bey, and some other members of the army were fighting bravely. In the evening, Bayezid the Thunderbolt and the remaining troops withdrew, fighting to Çataltepe. Only a force of 10,000 Janissaries remained around him. Timur's forces had surrounded the hill with 70,000 men. The Janissaries told the Sultan, "Do not leave us. Until the last soldier remains, no one shall touch even a hair on your head." Finally, as night fell, Bayezid and the Janissaries launched one last attack to break through the enemy encirclement. Meanwhile, Bayezid's horse was struck by a mace and collapsed to the ground. The Jermianid soldiers who leapt upon Bayezid recognized him, tied his hands, and brought him to Timur's tent. Bayezid, with his hands bound, was brought before Timur at the time of the night, Isha prayer, while Timur was playing chess with his son Shahrukh in his tent. Upon seeing Bayezid, Timur smiled and stood up, having noticed that Bayezid had a squint in one eye. Then Bayezid said, "To laugh at a man whom Allah has made miserable does not befit someone who claims to be a world conqueror like you." Timur replied, "No, I do not intend to mock. I am laughing at how Allah has left this world to a blind man like you and a lame man like me." Thus, the Battle of Ankara ended in Timur's victory. In this clash, which was one of the greatest field battles in history, both sides suffered casualties amounting to 50,000. Timur sent a conquest letter to King Charles VI of France and King Henry IV of England, declaring that he had defeated the Ottoman Sultan, whom they had failed to overcome at the Battle of Nicopolis. Timur's armies pursued the retreating Ottoman troops. Prince Suleiman, who fled with the largest number of soldiers, quickly reached Bursa, took his wife and children with him, and left Bursa with his army. While Prince Suleiman was fleeing, some of the people of Bursa, who heard that Timur's forces were coming, fled to the coast and some to Uludağ. When Timur's cavalry reached Bursa, they captured most of the people who had fled toward the coast. Among the captives were also highly valuable scholars. Timur's forces, having occupied Bursa, plundered homes and the palace. All the treasures in the Bursa palace fell into Timur's hands. Then they set fire to the city. Since most of the houses were wooden, Bursa was quickly ruined. Bayezid's daughters and his wife were taken captive. Timur's soldiers attacked and pillaged all across Anatolia. They gained much booty and wealth. In the Battle of Ankara, Timur not only defeated the Ottomans, but also aimed to dismantle the Ottoman state by returning their Anatolian lands to the former Beys. The Beys, whose lands had been seized by Yıldırım Bayezid, regained possession of their former territories thanks to Timur. Moreover, Greece was lost in Rumelia, the vassals had declared independence, and the Ottoman borders in Rumelia, which had once extended to the Adriatic Sea, were pulled back to the east of the Pindus Mountains. Thus, the remaining Ottoman territories in Anatolia were reduced to the lands around Amasya, Tokat and Çorum, as they had been in the time of Orhan Gazi. Timur also advanced toward Izmir and captured the coastal city known as Gevur Izmir, which was under the control of the Knights of Rhodes. Yıldırım Bayezid had planned to conquer the city during his first Anatolian campaign, but postponed the conquest, calculating that the Latins might provoke the Balkan principalities. Soon afterward, news came that Yıldırım Bayezid had become seriously ill. It was already known that he had been in poor health even before the battle. His captivity further worsened his condition. Timur personally appointed his own physician to treat Yıldırım Bayezid. But all efforts were in vain, and Yıldırım Bayezid passed away on March 9, 1403, at the age of only 47, due to whooping cough. When Emir Timur received the news of Bayezid the Thunderbolt's death, he is reported to have said the following words: "Alas, the world has lost a hero." He then sent his body to Bursa for burial with a ceremony worthy of his honor. He then released Bayezid's relatives who had been held captive and withdrew from Anatolia with an enormous treasure. He left behind a fire and chaos. 3 months after his return to Samarkand, he decided to march on Jin. He gathered an army of 200,000 people for this. But a while after he set out on the expedition, he fell ill and lost his life. Thus the world lost a Jihangir. This great empire he had established was not based on solid foundations and was soon disintegrated. However, the Ottoman Empire, which was thought to have disintegrated, was based on solid foundations and recovered in a short time and became the most powerful state in the world.